You're listening to Priceless Beauties podcast. Hey beautiful, Pamela Price here, makeup and spray tan artist, educator and owner of Priceless Beauty Studio, an international award-winning beauty business. But more importantly, I will be your host and cheerleader on this journey of self-love, self-awareness, and growth. Life didn't come with an instruction manual, and entrepreneurship can be a lonely and scary road at times. I am personally inviting you to join me on this brave adventure together while I chat with women just like you who open up and share their secrets about their business, their inspiration, and their stories. When we empower one another, great things happen. All right, babe, thanks so much for pressing play. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Priceless Beauties podcast. I'm really excited to be on here today because I have a friend of mine who digs into something really interesting that I have a unique interest in business because I'm kind of a part of what she does on the sidelines or behind the scenes. So welcome, Sharai. She is the creative director and founder of Sozo Studio. I'm going to give you a brief introduction, but of course you can share a little bit more about yourself as well. She's a brand strategist, a solo mom, ex-corporate conformist turned advocate for authentic self-expression. With over 15 years experience, she runs a branding studio in the Greater Toronto area, in our area too, Durham region. So for all of our locals, she helps business owners harness the power of branding. And this is what's different about what you do. It's from the inside out. And I love that so much. So whether you're a speaker, educator, thought leader, any entrepreneur really, she's going to help you craft a brand that really resonates with who you are, your mission, and everything that you stand for. So thank you so much for joining.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So we actually met at a local event here in Durham region. And so the connection between us is that I do beauty services for people who get branding photo shoots and create content for their brand. So I kind of get like only a snippet of what really happens in the whole branding scene, but I feel like it's so interesting. I feel like there's so much value in what you do. And I think it's almost like a service that is underlooked for a lot of companies. And so I'm super excited to just get to know a little bit about what you do and why you do it. So that way people out there listening can understand the importance and the power that the proper brand alignment really has for our businesses. So thank you. Tell me a little bit about, you said that you converted from the 9-to-5 corporate world into moving into having your own business and helping other businesses like really thrive. So talk to me about that transition. Like, why did you move into like make that big jump?
Yeah, definitely. So I've actually been designing since I was 12 years old. So technically you could say I have even more experience than I put on paper, but I don't want to exaggerate too much. But I fell in love with it when I was young and just loved the strategy and art component. And I started my career a year out of college in corporate, and I started as a graphic designer. Then they found out I could do programming development, and it kind of evolved from there. But I always freelanced through my career, and I loved my job. I loved my team, but there just came a point that after my first mat leave and then my second mat leave, I was just realizing that, there was so much conformity in corporate. I essentially was in the big boys club for a while. It was very heavily male dominated. And anytime I even exhibited anything like intense wise, it would be perceived badly. And it just was me just sharing my heart and sharing this like the voice that I have. And so I had to limit myself. I had to kind of hold back or, dampen my personality a bit so I was more palatable. And I just was kind of growing weary of that. And when the pandemic hit, I had a newborn at home. I had a preschooler with me. We were stuck at home. And it just became really real to me that I realized I don't want to be bound to someone else's vision or like perspective or expectations anymore. And I've been freelancing all this time. I knew I could do it. There would be no problem kind of launching my own branding studio. But I really wanted to help the little guy. And little guy, I only say that because compared to the big, Fortune 500 companies I was working with, I really wanted to just get back to the basics and work from the inside out, especially when in a corporate, it can be pretty superficial. They could see a problem and just try to come up with a solution without first starting inwardly and kind of working your way out to see how does that manifest? How does that translate externally when you start from the inside?
Yeah. So can we actually dig into that? Because this is what really made me like your brand stand out so much, which is, I guess, like perfect in alignment with like everything just full circle. But what does that really mean, like inside out? So it
Mm-hmm.
sounds great. That sounds awesome. But can we just dig in and like unpack that a little bit more?
Yep. So a lot of people, when they start their business, what's probably the first thing they do? They probably think, oh, what are my colors? What are my fonts? And there's no intention or purpose behind that. And while it might look kind of pretty, it doesn't resonate with them or resonate with the people who they're attracting. So, what I mean by inside out is really first going to the heart of what you represent. What is your mission? What is your vision? What values do you live by? And what is the core messaging that you want to be communicated so that when you do share your heart, when you do share your unique skill set and serve your community, that it's attracting people who are going to be a hell yes to you anyway, and you don't have to convince them. And so that's kind of like the intention is trying to not start with the superficial. And when I say superficial, I believe in visual branding. Like you said, there is power in it, and you work in the beauty services as well. And so it has so much more substance and richness when you start from a place of intention. And that's kind of what that means.
That makes so much sense. And I feel like there's like these buzzwords about being authentic and being real and all this stuff. So what are some like I guess tangible steps that someone can take to actually find because I felt like it was hard for me and only in the past few years and I've been doing this also freelancing and kind of doing my own thing for many years and it was only in the past few years, working with another brand, actually, like I was subcontracted through them, where I worked closely to the owner and the founder of that company. And I got to realize that she really was who she was on her
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, on her website, on the events that she hosted, in meetings with the team members. And I previously didn't feel comfortable to share really who I was on a platform like social media in the past because I thought that brides might think that I'm ghetto if I like play a rap song on my thing or that I shouldn't look or act or say certain things because my brides might perceive me as not professional or something like that. And I'm not saying that
Yeah.
you should share everything on there, but it was more just like me giving myself permission to kind of just be myself a lot more. So how do we find that like that connection between being ourselves, being authentic, being true to ourselves, but also like finding the right verbiage and the right colors and the right tone and the right messaging to also speak to our audience so they are hell yeses when they come across like our platforms and our pages. Like what is that? How do you dig that out of somebody who's maybe scared to show up as themselves like online? Like, and I know a lot of people are.
Yeah, and I mean, it's my own story too. When I first jumped into social media, I thought, oh, nobody's going to want to work with me. I'm not glamorous. I don't sip Negronis on the beach side. I am a single mom and I'm just, like enjoying life at the park type thing. So I was the same way. And it really was when I sat down and just trusted myself and there's actually an exercise that I do with my clients that I kind of split it up into columns. And there'll be one column for like, how would others describe you? How would your audience maybe describe you? And how do you want to be described? And brainstorm words there. And then the next column being, okay, well, how do you describe your ideal audience? Like, are they tenacious? Are they determined? Are they kind of funny? Do they have a dry humor? Identifying that. And then moving on to the column of how you want to sound, like your brand voice, and how you want others to feel. And then when you go and brainstorm all those columns, you kind of look back and pick your top one in each column. And it can feel overwhelming, but once you look back, it's such an eye-opening experience because, like you said, Pamela, it's so hard sometimes to give ourselves permission. But when you see it on a piece of paper and you're not listening to the voices, you're not listening to anyone else, you're just looking at kind of the big picture, you can kind of see the themes that pop out. Maybe you are a big personality, or maybe the people you work with do have a bit of a dark humor, and that's okay because the people who are going to resonate with that, you're going to mesh so well. Because that's the other thing. I used to do freelancing and I didn't follow this inside out kind of methodology. And I found the experience really frustrating, and I didn't always hit the mark with my clients because I was kind of just shooting an arrow in the dark. And so it wasn't a fun experience for them. And I found like I was just, trying so hard to get nowhere fast. And ever since I've shifted gears and I kind of follow this approach now, it's just so easy to see the themes and pick that out. Like, I'm not making up anything when I work with clients. I am just reflecting back to you who you are. Because when you embody that, when you embrace that, then the people who fit that kind of brand that you're attracting, you're going to love working with them. And I think business should be fun, right?
Yeah. And it's like one thing that really helped me too, like that I realized after is like how I am in person with my clients might be a little sillier. We might listen to rap
Yeah.
music in the
Yeah.
background. So like when you meet me in person, it's probably going to be like that. But for some reason that when you put the business, in front of that, it somehow makes it scary a little bit, right? So I think giving
Mm-hmm.
yourself permission and working with a professional like you to extract those elements and then put them in a way that makes sense for your business just makes sense. Right?
Yeah,
Oh.
definitely. I say that a lot because even I hire out, and I get professionals and coaches to kind of reflect that back to me because we can be our own worst critic, or something we might see as a weakness or something to hide is actually what makes us so different and stand out and
Mm-hmm.
unique, and it's going to explode our business, and yet we're downplaying it. So I do
Mm-hmm.
really encourage that people really get that outside perspective from a trusted person, from a trusted professional who can kind of listen in. And that's something different I do in my work too, is that a lot of designers, and I even have done this in the past, will start with a questionnaire. So we give you a bunch of questions and we expect you to know all the answers and to figure it out. And you tend to censor yourself or answer in a way that you think we want you to answer. And
Yeah.
I just found that wasn't getting to the meat and to the gold of everything. So now I do deep dive workshops where 2 hours I sit with you, I ask questions, I listen, I prompt you further. And a lot of people describe it as brand therapy because it's literally just me listening and kind of directing the conversation so I can really get to the heart of who you are, what you want to accomplish in this world, because people are just amazing and there's so much diversity. And I think we do the world a disservice when we kind of tone ourselves down.
Yeah. And I wanted to touch on something that has, coming up a lot in the whole world, really, but I'm sure it's impacting branding and communications is like the use of AI. So talk to me about what that looks like and how we can utilize it in a way that is not allowing us, not making us all sound like robots, but also it is efficient and is effective. So how
Mm-hmm,
can we use it? Because I know it's in the graphic design world, it's in the photography
mm-hmm.
world, it's even in the beauty with the filters and everything that's happening and the copy and all of the communication and everything really. It's like infiltrating our entire world. The robots are
Yeah,
taking over.
yeah.
How, like, what is your stance on like using AI, or have you been able to kind of shift with, the changes of everything that's happening in business as a result of that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm geek at heart too. So I love embracing new technology. And what I love about AI is it's not a creator. It's never going to replace the human mind in terms of what we can come up with fresh ideas, but it emulates. And so how I like to use AI is when we're working from the inside out, we have all that content that we can now feed AI, and AI will get to learn who you are and what your brand represents. Then you can start asking it questions. Help me write this caption. Help me rewrite. Like I love asking it to rewrite in my brand voice to kind of pinpoint to make sure if maybe I'm sounding a bit too corporate because I tend to have that problem sometimes. I got to remind myself. I'm like, no, it's me, Sherry here, nobody else. And so that's what I love to use AI for. And I think we should all be embracing it. And like you said, it's so efficient. And when you feed it to tell it who you are, that's the biggest impact and most value it can bring. But when you don't feed it anything and you just expect it to write something out for you, that's when everybody's going to start sounding the same. And it's going to make your brand untrustworthy, which is not what we want.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that we don't have to be too afraid of it. I do think
I'm
it's a
not.
useful tool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it. I was obsessed with it. Like when it first came out, I was like, "Oh my God, it's crazy!" I just like wrote all the things, and it was awesome. But after I overused it, I had to, like you said, take a step back and figure out how to use it most efficiently and effectively so that way it wasn't starting to just like create that distrust or whatever. So I've been a lot more mindful now that it's really come into the mainstream to make sure that I'm using it. And I found cool ways that you can actually create, like you said, a brand voice, and you can teach it to do
Hmm.
that. And you can even save it on there. So that way your messaging is kind of staying as cohesive as possible. So yeah, super cool, super cool. Talk to me about the workshops that you have, because I know you do different training. So you do the one-on-one. So talk to me about just like the different service offerings that you provide.
Yeah, so kind of my core, most popular offer and package is my brand breakthrough. And so what that is, I've kind of touched on it a little bit, but we kind of go through three core phases. And the first phase is that deep dive that I talked about. And we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of who you are, what your story is, what you want to come out in your brand. And that's also going to help with the messaging, because in that package, I work with you on the brand positioning and strategy, your vision, your heart, your mission, all that. But then I also work with you to come up with your brand voice guide so that you can feed it into AI or pass it off to another content writer so they can say in your voice if that's what you want. And then that last step is always the visuals, the logos, the patterns, the colors, the fonts, all licensed to you so you can use it however. And I always include templates, because one big philosophy for me is I don't want you to have to keep coming back to me. My intention is I want to equip you. I want you to feel that you're in good hands and you know how to use it. So I even give little trainings, personalized trainings on what and how to use the content and assets I'm delivering you. So yeah, we really start with that deep dive. We move into a direction phase where I kind of give a snapshot of where I'm taking the branding, both the messaging and the visuals, because I found that I never want to get too far in the process and realize, oh, I've made some assumptions that maybe weren't correct. I want to make sure that it truly does reflect you and embody what you're all about. So there's always that little snapshot point in time where my clients can be like, oh, yes, spot on, let's keep going, or let's tweak this before we move on. And that final stage, like I've already mentioned, is the design stage where we build out the full brand voice guide, which has tone, vocabulary, language, even like it even gives you guidance on what kind of grade level to talk at. Because sometimes I do have some clients who, run mentorship programs for CEOs. So their kind of grade level language is a little bit different than maybe someone who's working in pediatrics or something like that, or with teens. So it's a really fun experience, and it's really robust and comprehensive. And I would say that's the most popular offer that people come to me for.
What about, I know I might be jumping the gun here, but what about people that maybe have already been in business for a certain, season or period of time and they never really took the time to, because I work with a lot of beauty professionals and I notice like we do show up looking really pretty online. Like we have great photos
Hmm.
and colors and all of these things, but people that maybe haven't actually taken the time to sit down and do this work, is it like too late at this point? Like what about a rebrand? Does that change? Does that reduce the trust or does it like, is there a good time to do a rebrand or like a, if you've never done branding to like start even though you've already been in business for a couple of years, or what does that look like for people that are kind of like already at some point, some stage in their business, but they haven't really taken the time to think about this or put the work or energy into doing this? Like what does that look like, not necessarily for people that are brand new but people that are already in
Hmm.
the game?
Yeah, I think you asked when is the right time, and it's when you're asking those questions, I would say. That's the right time because that means you're sensing a shift or there's something not aligned. You don't feel like the externals are representing the internals or vice versa. So if you're asking those questions, that's a good time to start considering, okay, who do I need to find to support me in this process? And highly recommend someone who's really going to work internally with you first so that way when we externalize that, when we design all the visuals and everything else that comes with that, that every little piece, your voice, every little piece relates back to, like you said, that work that you do at the beginning. And I think it's generally, if we're trying to give a time range, it's usually like at least a year in business and you've gotten quite a few sales under your belts. And that's generally a good time for that initial kind of rebranding.
Mm-hmm. So you've probably had the experience of working with clients that you didn't align with, or people who, you're like you said, people that are just hell yeses. If you're getting a lot of hell no's, or maybe I'll not interested, or I'll call you back, or ghost you, then maybe maybe something's not aligned, right? Does that sound
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. And because
Yeah.
I have to, I'll be honest, I don't get a lot of no's anymore. I used to. And so that just shows that the people who are coming to me are pretty much vetting themselves because they already feel like they know me, they can trust me, they've seen the work. And like you said, they're already ready to say yes. They just need to know the details and specifics. So that is a good sign
Mm-hmm.
when you're finding that not the right fit people keep coming to you. Well, there's something about your branding, your messaging, your visuals, all of it that might be just a little bit off.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great point because it's such a waste of energy and time at the end of the
Yeah.
day to just keep throwing spaghetti at a wall and wondering like what is the missing piece, what's
Hmm.
off. So I feel like that whole brand, just tying it all together properly, like you said, it's going to speak to the right people and that's your clients for you, because God knows we don't want to spend time just like we're, as entrepreneurs, we're so busy doing all of the things that we don't have time to
Hmm.
deal with. My husband calls them tire kickers. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like if we
It's a
can just
lot of
weed them out.
energy, right?
Yeah.
Like that transaction of energy too. And then when it's like they ghost you or whatever, and it's kind of like, where does this energy go? I was so stoked to do this because for me personally, like I really love and believe in the work that I do. And I really see the value and the difference it can make in people. So yeah, when that happens, it's kind of disappointing. Like, oh, this would be so good for you. Come back. What are you doing?
And
But
if
they
I'm
need
being
to have that
honest,
buy-in.
yeah, and if I'm being honest, like then I know you're going to get no's. It's part of business,
Yep.
but the no's hurt a little, especially if you
Yeah.
have put your heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into building something. The no's can hurt. So I think the importance of, like you said, finding all of those pieces and putting them together in a way that really helps the clients to understand what it is that you do and what you're all about is so important. So, so, so important.
Yeah.
And sorry, I had interrupted your train of thought before about the different offerings. I know you have a workshop that's happening as well. So feel free to, to get back into
No
that.
worries. I before I move on to that, I just want to speak to that point where, the nose hurt. And I think that's what's so great about this process too, is that you can kind of go back to the basics and remind yourself, okay, what is my mission? What is my vision? this is why I'm here. This is why I'm showing up. I want to leave the world a better place. I want to empower women, whatever it might be, that you can kind of ground yourself back into that focus so that, yes, the no's sting, but you can move on. You can kind of find that energy again. So that actually kind of leads into what I was going to share about the virtual group workshop, the brand revival workshop that I will be hosting in early June, depending on when listeners are listening to this. And I'm really excited about it because I don't know about you, but I've been really sensing this time of year there just seems to be a lull in business. There seems like a lot of people are feeling stagnation. They're feeling like unmotivated, let down. Maybe they're hearing a lot of no's. And whatever it is, I just sense this collective like disappointment and this like sigh.
Mm.
And so this workshop I'm really excited about because it's all about breathing life back into you and your business and getting excited again and lighting the fire under you. I'll be pulling some pieces from my proprietary framework, and we're going to be doing really interactive exercises as a group for the day. And it really is just about, again, rooting you back into why did you begin? What your first love, you falling in love with your business and what you wanted to accomplish in this world. Let's bring it back and remind yourself this is why we're doing what we're doing and nothing can stop us and we're going to move ahead. So I'm really excited about that. And I do plan to put together some kind of replay offer option as well once it's recorded. So I'm really excited about that.
Perfect. And I think it's so important for business owners and entrepreneurs, creatives, all of us, that every once in a while that you take the time to get back into something like you said, that the revival, like you need to
Yes.
refocus and
Yes.
re-dig in and dig those roots back into the ground, because even like you said that I don't know about all industries, but I would say that we had a slower season, like we're coming off of a slower season as well. It does seem to be collective amongst other industries
Mm-hmm.
from what I can see. I try to focus on the good and create instead of just having nothing happening. We just actually
Yeah.
ran a networking event to try to revive people as well and
There you
inspire people.
go.
So I think it's
Yeah.
so important, whatever that looks like for you and your business and whatever you have interest in or something that you're wanting to do. I think brand is a big one for a lot of businesses. Take that time to build that energy, that inspiration, a fresh set of eyes, even working like you have it's in a group setting. I love
Mm-hmm.
that too, because I think you can build off each other's energy and there's
Yeah.
always something to be learned, whether you've been in business for 5 months or 5 years or whatever that looks like. You can always learn something new, a new perspective, a new idea, a new insight. Even if it's just rebuilding that energy, that alone is worth taking the time to do something like this, because otherwise, like you said, it can just be overwhelming, unmotivating, frustrating, and just you wonder, like, is this even worth it sometimes,
Right, right. And we
So,
all feel it. Like we all can
yeah,
feel
like,
it.
or
Yeah.
like imposter syndrome, like, what the hell am I doing? Right. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
putting yourself in the space with like-minded people, even if it's across different business, industries, because we're all kind of going through this together and different roads, but we're all kind of
Mm-hmm.
heading together, is so, so, so important. So I try to sign up for as many things as I can in my schedule, because it lights me up. This is what brings me joy.
Yeah.
Servicing my clients brings me joy, lots of different things, but being around other professionals and learning something new, like we have to be forever students if we have our own business. Like we have to be lifelong
I
learners.
agree.
Otherwise we're going to
Yeah.
get lost behind, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Definitely.
important. So important. Okay, talk to me a little bit about just maybe some insights that you can share, just some little like snippets or little tips that you could share for anybody who like just tangible items that could help people to understand a little bit about really what a brand is, and maybe some of the like success stories that you've had with any of your past clients, just to give people an inside look at what you really do for your clients.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's It's so amazing to work with clients the first time, but it's something altogether when they come back and you can kind of work through that evolution. So I don't remember what your first question was. I know your second question was the. That's where I'm having a brain fart right now. Your first question
Just
was
like,
different, but
yeah, just like, okay, well, if you want to share a few, stories, I know I didn't plan the question, it just came out. So my first question was some like tangible tips, and the second
that's it.
question
Okay,
was,
and
yeah, any
stories.
success
Yeah,
stories.
that's
Sorry.
it. I wanted to do it in the right order, and I'm like, wait, there
I
was
should have
another
wrote the
question in
question.
there. It's okay. It's okay. I think some tips are the biggest one is we may not see ourselves as personal brands, but when you're on social media, when you are podcasting, when you're doing any type of this work, even networking in person, if you're the CEO of your company, if you're the founder, you are a personal brand. And just everything we've
Mm,
talked about, that's why it's so important to invest in your brand and really do that work. And what that means, we're human. So your brand should come off as human as well and not something that, you have to contort or contrive. And I say a lot, branding from the inside out is less that you find a box and you put yourself in and you try to make it work. But branding from the inside out is actually, okay, what space am I taking up in this industry, in my community? And let
mm,
me create a framework around that. And that's the human element that you're bringing in personality. And I want to say to the introverts out there, being introverted is a personality. Like you don't have to be loud and boisterous and funny to have your personality come off. Like I'm talking about clients, I worked with one client who I encouraged her and helped her kind of lean into her dry humor. And it has really helped her, again, connect with people on a whole nother level that they didn't realize, like, oh, this is actually pretty funny. I never knew this side of her. And it creates that connection, right? Because you have that human element. And the last thing I want to say about the human component is a lot of people when they're trying to build out what their brand is, what they think it represents, they'll kind of look at it from one side and they'll say, you know what? I'm all about bold empowerment. I'm fierce, kind of leaning into that, which is great. But again, as humans, we have multiple facets. We have different sides. And so I always talk about juxtaposition, which means, okay, so you're fierce and you're bold and you're empowering, but what are you going to pair that with to balance that out? Because again, nobody's only ever bold and fierce. There's other elements to that
mm,
personality. And so I really encourage others and you and anybody listening to think about the diverse facets of your brand and your personality. And one exercise you can do for that is you can say, I am, so for instance, mine, I am quirky, but not childish. You can kind of say what you are, but what you're not. And that creates some balance and some tension as well to make sure that you're not overdoing it in one way or underdoing it in another way.
That makes sense. And I love that too, that we have to remember that we're humans. And also, we go through seasons and we grow and we
Mm-hmm.
change. And our brand, I'm guessing,
It
and
should
talking to
change.
you, it should grow and change as we do, or as our services change, or as whatever the different, components or elements of our business and ourselves grow and change and evolve. So I'm assuming that it's something that we should be taking a look at. I don't know, how often should we maybe be taking a look at, is our brand still in alignment with what we're doing, with, who we've
Yep.
become or who we're evolving to? Like, how often should we be taking a look at that? Like, is this messaging still aligning with me? Like, does this even
Mm-hmm.
make sense anymore?
Yeah, I hope we're always asking that question because in, just a brief moment, something can shift in us. Maybe there's something personal that happened that's now changing our direction. Like, I hope that we're creating space for us so we have that permission that we talked about earlier on, that permission to lean into something else. And I think there's still a way that we can be true to ourselves and who we've always shown up to be, but just in a more maybe elevated way or in a more personal way or more specific and direct to some specific topic or area of expertise. Like, that's what's so beautiful about being human. Like you said, there's seasons, we grow, we evolve. People expect your brand to do that as well. So don't feel like you're not being true to yourself, or you're being confusing if you're going through an evolution, that's beautiful. Bring them along in that evolution. Let them know that something's not feeling right and I'm on a mission to figure that out, and I can sense something's changing. So that's kind of like what I would recommend for that.
I love that. I love that so much. Amazing. What was the other question?
Oh, just client stories. So,
Yeah, yeah,
oh, I hope, like, I'm trying to, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I have one. I'll give it a kind of just a bit of a story. She came to me, I think it was about 2 years ago. She's a pageant coach, and she was really wanting to kind of grow her business. And at the time, she was still working a 9 to 5 type job. And after working together, her business just exploded. And she didn't change. All that was different was now we're embodying her visually and in the messaging, and making sure that the entire brand ecosystem mirrors the amazing qualities and expertise that she has. So, like, we worked on her website, we worked on her visuals, we worked on her messaging. But talking about evolution, I just actually just got off a call with her this morning because we are doing a rebrand already in the next stage. And she came back from vacation feeling uninspired and really struggling to get back in and feeling confused, like, where am I going with this? But after we had our clarity call, she's now like invigorated again and excited and has clarity. And that's what's so great about working with professionals, is that sometimes it's just hard to muster the energy within ourselves. But when someone is reflecting back to you all that you're capable of and how awesome you are, like, who wouldn't like lap that up and just get so excited?
yeah. And even just like that accountability, like, okay, I'm committed to figuring this out. Like, I personally, and I know this is like, I'm not alone in this. When you said that she's feeling like confused and lacking direction, because I feel like in business, sometimes we just like doing little pivots here and there, or industry changes, or
Mm-hmm.
a freaking pandemic, or whatever. We have to get creative and figure out what to do next. But we're kind of at like this fork in the road, and we're like, well, what direction like should we go? Where should we focus our energy, or how do we want to, rebrand, or revive ourselves in a way to get re-excited and get more clients coming through the door, or whatever the case may be. So I think having that kind of sounding board as well, that I love that you
Mm-hmm.
said the brand therapy, that, oh my God, I love that. You need to coin that. That just hit the spot. Yeah, just like having that dedicated time and energy where you have somebody who is not only a professional, but also there to be that sounding board, there to reflect back what it is that's truly inside of you. Because I think as entrepreneurs, especially if you are kind of doing all of the things in your business, it can get super overwhelming because you're wearing all of the hats.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like you don't really even like take the time to like take off the hats in order
Yeah.
to like slow down and figure out what that looks like for you. So thank you for creating that space for people to be able to do that and get very clear on what that looks like. Because at the end of the day, we all didn't get into business just to make a shit ton of money. We got into doing what we love to do because it fills our cup, because it makes us feel good, because we're making a difference, whatever that case, like whatever it is for each person. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we've lost that, what is the point of all of this? Because it's really hard.
It
Like,
is.
what's
This
the
is
point?
not for the faint of heart. Like, it takes a lot of intention.
Yeah, like, what's the point? Right? So,
Mm-hmm.
if anybody's listening, just like, yes, I feel stuck. I'm lost. I'm getting the tire kickers. There's just like something that's feeling off. I highly encourage you to take a look to see if maybe the branding, and it sounds almost, for me, it's like, oh, it's just makeup. Oh, it's just branding. It's like, no, it actually is important, um, for the right people at the right time, of course. But just remember that your brand is worth the investment, the energy, the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I highly encourage anybody to take the time to do that. And I love that you're having like a workshop as a great like entry to what you offer. So, hopefully anybody listening, we'll try to get this episode out before it goes live. But I love that you have the replay available as well. Anything else that you want to share that you just wanted to touch on that maybe I missed, or whatever your heart wants to speak on?
I don't know. I think we went through all that quickly, but we covered a lot, I feel like.
We did.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
That was good. It
Okay,
was good.
awesome. I love to always ask, what is your favorite like quote or mantra that you're living by right now? And I read it and I really like, I got goosebumps when I heard that one. I'm like, yeah, it's so true. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, so it's a quote by Winston Churchill, and it's kites fly highest against the wind, not with it. And I even have like a tattoo of a kite here.
Um,
I've had some personal events in my life that have really helped me kind of lean into that. And what I mean by that is that, sometimes it takes us pushing against the wind, against the current to fly highest, to soar to new heights. And so talking about getting away from corporate and doing my own thing. It's that conformity. It's that I am a recovering people pleaser. And so I've come to
yes.
realize I serve other people the best when I'm truest to myself. And that often means that I have to fly against the wind. And it's not a slight on you, it's not a judgment on you or anything like that. This is just what's true for me and my experience. And I know I can do greater things and impact the world for better because I'm being true to that mission. And so for me, that's like, I have a little written thing on the wall. I have my tattoo. So I'm like always just constantly reminding myself, am I just doing and following a solution that I think works for somebody else and trying to fit that to work for me? Or am I figuring out, okay, well, this is who I am and these are my limits because we all have limits and I think that's okay and we can push them and grow them. But at the same time, sometimes we just need to be real and say without judgment and shame, like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. How can I work within that and still show up?
Mhm.
And so that's
Mhm.
really been important to me.
This just brings me to another thought as well, because just like upstream against wind, like all of these different things, I feel like a lot of time and like moving out of, the conformist, you know, corporate that you were in, it's like, this brings me to this kind of complex, I guess it's not complex, but tell me what you think about this. Because I feel like, and I'm guilty of it too, I feel like, especially like on social media, doesn't it just feel like everybody's doing the same thing? Like, how
Yeah.
do we stay current, be trendy, like stay, relevant, but yet be us and go against the grain? Like, how do we find that balance of this and that, the yin and yang? Like, how do we find that balance? Like, what? I'm like asking you to like solve the problems of the
Well,
world, but like,
it really goes back to your brand heart and that core and that inner work that I talked about. Because if you're staying true to that, it doesn't matter what's trendy. And I live by this. I mean, if I have an idea for a post or like for content marketing or an email that comes and I'm like, oh, this would be awesome, I just do it. Like, I don't care that maybe it's not what's in style or maybe it doesn't suit the algorithm, but that's being true and genuine to the message that I feel called to share. And it's more motivating that way when I'm not obsessing about what's going on. Now and for me personally, I always like to challenge myself. How can I make it a little bit different? So I don't think there's anything wrong jumping on trends or anything like that, but let's think critically and say, okay, this is how they're doing it, but I don't have to do it that way. How can I reinvent this a little bit and show my personality and show my flair? And so I really challenge myself to do things like that as well.
I like that. So I'm overcomplicating it.
Probably. Just be you. Easier said than done.
And it's like also like I've been listening to a book on, like, it's called, I can't remember, something about intuition. I have to pull it up. I'm audio
Mm-hmm.
listening to it.
Good.
And it's like almost just like stepping in, like your intuition is just really like stepping into
Yeah.
like your true self and like trusting that like gut
Yeah.
instinct. Like, oh, I have an idea. Like, let's just do it. Like, let's not overthink it kind of thing or whatever. But so it's almost like intuitive branding, intuitive business, like
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to kind of like dig into who you are and like what feels right, like not being afraid to show up or being afraid to do something different or edgy or whatever it is for you and your brand, but kind of just trusting yourself, like digging into that and like trusting yourself, right? And
Yeah. I love
not
that. That's
not
exactly it.
stressing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's like, it's almost like, I believe that it's like a shift that's coming back around to people wanting to, like, we're buying more with like emotion, we're buying with that trust
Mm,
factor. And um, we're shifting from everything being kind of like, first it was like efficient and fast and templating. And now I feel like a shift of kind of shifting back to more personal. Does that sound right? Does
yeah.
that feel true
Yeah,
for
it
you as
does.
well?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
there
starting to
was
see a shift.
definitely, yeah, there's definitely a boom for templating. And I just, again, here was where I went against the grain. I'm like, I know this is what's trendy and I know this is what's selling, but that doesn't fit my brand. And so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I can do it a little bit differently and talk about it differently, but that's how that helped ground me through that kind of trendiness and realizing, well, that's not how I'm serving my clients. That's great
Mm-hmm.
for them. I love for them that they have that ability and capacity and the way they're doing it. I know this is the way that I best serve my clients. And at the end of the day, that's what I want to accomplish. I want them to feel valued and seen and appreciated and celebrated. And this is the way I know how to do it. And I want to stay
Mm-hmm.
true to that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That feels right. You know, when you hear
Yeah.
that and you get into that, and I think a lot of people will just know when they've found it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for going against the wind and trusting yourself. Because if you didn't, you still could be probably doing an amazing job in that position that you were in before, but it wouldn't feel good and you wouldn't be able to help people in such a way. So, thank you for doing that. I feel like it's a true inspiration for like any entrepreneur, to take a leap of faith like that and to trust themselves and to be able to show up in a way that really feels good. And that is my dream for all entrepreneurs, really,
Mm-hmm.
is that we can find that space that feels good, and show up in our brands and show up in our business and show up when we serve our clients in a way that feels natural, feels like us, but also is serving people, right? So, and at the end of the day, we make money from it. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. Spread the wealth around. It's not a bad word. Yeah.
So that's amazing. For anybody who's listening that wants to reach out to you, maybe join one of your workshops, I'll make sure to put everything in the show notes. But Sherry, can you just share your contact information and the best way for people to reach you as well?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, so you can find me at the handle at the Sozo Studio, or the sozostudio.com is my website, and you can get all my contact information there. But I absolutely love having conversations with people and meeting new people. So if you're listening and you want to connect, DM me, I will respond. So hopefully you do that.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you very, very much. And I'm going to look at my calendar and see if I can get on that class with you because that sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to that. So thanks again for joining me today. Thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up. And that was a great conversation. I'm feeling inspired.
Thank you. Thank you. This is great.
Thanks.
Hey girl, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share a positive 5-star review. And as a thank you for your love and energy, my team will send you a free copy of my social media content and goal planner. Please screenshot it and email it to info@priceless-beauty.com so we can get that to you right away. Until next time, let's stay connected on IG. Come say hello at Priceless Beautygram. And don't forget, you are worthy and capable of achieving anything your heart desires.